Welcome to Insider Event, Marketing for Small Business, presented by MailChimp. Here's our host, Senior Entrepreneurship Reporter, Jennifer Ortakales Dawkins.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ortakales Dawkins, a senior reporter covering entrepreneurship here at Insider. Thank you for joining. We are in a unique moment for small and medium-sized businesses in the U.S. In the last 2 years, we've seen a record-breaking number of people start their own businesses. With more businesses created, it is so much harder to stand out and reach your community of consumers across platforms. Marketers need to constantly pivot and make the most out of sometimes limited resources. We would love for our audience to join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #InsiderEvents. You can also submit questions for our panelists through the dashboard at the bottom of your screen. You will see an icon for our survey that you can take at any time during or after the event. We want your feedback. And now let's talk about how entrepreneurs and small business marketers can take their marketing to the next level. We'll discuss insights and actionable tips to help marketers maximize impact with limited resources. Here with me today are Jamal Miller, Senior Director of Product Marketing at MailChimp, Shane Pitson, Vice President of Marketing at Quip, Tiffany Tolliver, Founder and CEO of the Emma Rose Agency. Welcome and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, before you begin marketing to customers, a business must first establish its brand identity and understand who they are marketing to. So Tiffany, can you tell us how can a business build a strong brand identity in order to stand out in a crowded market?
Absolutely. So at the agency, what I always say is strategy comes before design, but even before strategy comes the vision. So to stand out really with your brand identity, you have to have a clear vision. And that's why I always encourage my founders and CEOs, because what we're communicating is something bigger than trying to generate revenue, right? We're really trying to bridge a gap in the market to kind of unfold what is in our hearts a lot of the time. So I want you to start with the unseen, right? So vision comes before visuals always when it comes to identity, which can kind of be backwards, but trust me, it'll work. And then I want you to look at defining if you're just starting or refining if you're already in business, a brand story, and making sure that that core messaging is rooted in your core values. That's how you are going to attract the people who truly are going to become your core customer base. All of these things fold into visuals because once you know how you're going to communicate with your audience, and you can make and determine design decisions that are going to reach them. We are not going after your favorite color or what your competitors are doing in their business, right, for their brand identity. Another do is develop a creative trust. So there are a lot of things that go into creating a brand identity. One that I mentioned before was kind of looking at what your competitors are doing. But also within your business, you can create a creative trust, because a lot of the times, have you ever seen like something that's been put out into the market and it's like, why did they do that? Did they not run that past their board? Did they not do a little bit more market research? And so I encourage a lot of my CEOs and founders to create an internal creative trust that before they push out visuals, before they, make branding decisions, to take a pause and really run it around the room to make sure they're making the best decision for their end users. One don't that I have for you is don't complicate things. Make it simple. When you're looking at creating your brand identity, you want to have something that it can be seen from across the room, right? And so when you think of the really legacy-based, really easy to find logos like Nike and Target and things like that, they're not changing up their brand identity often, right? They make little tweaks, like Google, if you notice, will make a little tweak to their fonts, but what they're doing is spending time in the discovery phase, right? So that strategy before design, and then seeding that time in, and then making a decision to go for what their audience wants to go for, and then making small, simple tweaks as their brand grows.
Awesome. Yeah, those are all really great pieces of advice. And, I especially love what you said about creating that brand story and then working in core values to then create that core customer base. And so, Jamal, how can a business identify who their target audience is, that core customer base?
Yeah, so it starts with testing and starting to get messaging out there that you can learn from to see who responds to what. The whole idea of finding product market fit if you're a new business, or continuing to hone that product market fit if you're an evolving business, it's adding new features or services or products to your portfolio. And the way to do that is to get out there and ask and get things in front of that audience. In a lot of cases, if you can get some sort of prototype in front of your audience, some sort of test environment that they can play within, some sort of you know creative tests, so they can get a feel for your messaging or how you're positioning the offering that you're bringing forth. That's often the best way to learn about who's going to respond to what you're selling, and what you might be able to offer them that's going to resonate. I think the other thing is, to the extent that you can, talking to people. There's often no better way to learn about your audience than to be very intentional about spending time with them. One of the things that we pride ourselves on in MailChimp is being very close to our customers, setting up a lot of time to engage with them. We actually just finished up having a session earlier today where we had a customer in the office talking about their business. So making that a part of your company culture and the way that you do business, where you're constantly getting that feedback from users about your offering and figuring out ways that you can make it better to serve their needs.
Awesome. And so, yeah, I love that idea of having a prototype to really understand who your audience is. And now, once you've established that and you know who you're talking to, Shane, how would you suggest businesses use marketing to establish trust among their customers?
Yeah, I think it does come down to communication and using that as a foundation for building trust. And love what Tiffany had to say about starting with that vision. I think that helps to ensure that your communication remains consistent, and being able to replicate that across your proactive communication, your reactive, and your visual communication helps to really reinforce your brand and helps to build trust, because there's a certain level of consistency there. Within that, I think with proactive communication, thinking about your emails, your advertising, your presence on organic social, be consistent. And if you're posting regularly and within a framework, then your audience and your customers are going to grow to, increasingly trust you and come to you for that type of insight. There's still room to be a little bit unexpected within all of that, like have fun within it. I know we published a fun blog post. The title was just "There Are Creatures in Your Mouth," and we dove into the oral microbiome, and that's obviously an extension beyond just our products of our toothbrush and our floss, et cetera, but it really helps to create space for more two-way communication and into other topics. And with that, there is going to be two-way communication. So with your reactive commentary or communication, it's important to be honest. I know that as we were continuing to grow, we would get a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I've never heard about this before, but how does it compare to X, Y, or Z?" And looking for a lot of direct comparisons. And we would often be really honest and say, "Hey, if you're brushing your teeth for 2 minutes twice a day, replacing your brush or brush head like every 3 months, keep doing what you're doing. Like what you're doing is great." And here's how Quip addresses all of those points. And if you're like many of us, you're probably falling short on one of those areas. And here's what we do to help with that. And so being able to keep that conversation centered and focused is another way to build trust. And then visually, as we've expanded more products, not always just having that perfect cut and polish with your brand creative, but also working with your customers to elevate those voices and to show diversity in your talent and in your customer base is really important and is another way to build trust. We say we're oral care for every mouth, and we really want to express that in our communication style and strategy by elevating the voices of a diverse array of customers.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it's really interesting what you said about consistency is key, but also you can kind of bring up the unexpected from time to time, and that's still okay to have those creative bounds. Amazing. So once you've begun to create content, it's important to leverage metrics and data to optimize your next campaign. These metrics can help you understand what worked and where to invest your marketing budget. So Tiffany, what data should business owners prioritize when evaluating their marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think first, the company needs to assess like what success to them looks like in their marketing because, we all have different goals. So if I'm working with client A or client B, their metrics for success are going to be different, even though they could be doing the same exact thing. I work with service-based providers, a lot of coaches, a lot of successful like founders and things that are growing their platforms. However, even though their KPIs may be the same. It's just like what does for me as a founder, as a business success look like? It isn't always quantifiable by my money or by social media or marketing efforts. So again, we're starting at the top with vision. That's going to be my thread throughout the whole thing. So identifying what success looks like in marketing to you all. And then where I want to go to next is like, dive back into your current or your past clients. Think about their experience. Like the customer client journey is so important in retaining business and getting new business, right? And so we all know that, you can make more money or expand your reach by your clients telling the story, right? And that's something that I really instill with my CEOs and founders is just like, how can we make this lift easier? How can we speak more authentically to people? That means that we have to kind of go back and say, what has been the experience of the people or the clients or the customers that you've had before? And it kind of takes a little bit of courage because sometimes people may not have the experience that you wanted them to have. However, if you don't keep that pulse on where you've been and where you are right now, you can't create what you need to do in the future. And so those metrics that you need are going to guide you in that journey of where your marketing should go next. I really think that specifically for service-based entrepreneurs, well, just for companies in general, but I specify or specialize in service-based entrepreneurs, is that you have to look at what's coming through the door, right? So we've looked at the past, we've looked at the present, now we've got to look at what's coming in. And so when I get on calls with clients for my own business, I'm like, are they hitting the marks? Are they coming prepared to the call, knowing who I am and what I do? What's solution I offer to them? What problem I'm solving? The price point even that I charge, are they coming equipped to be able to take care of that or at least having that knowledge? If the answer is no, then I need to tweak something in my marketing. Something isn't hitting right. And what I suggest to founders, CEOs, marketers across the board is to use that differentiation between what you want the message to be and what is being received back to you to then create more content in your marketing. So answer the questions that you're getting. Make some markers of clarification where there seem to be a little bit of confusion for the people who you really want to bring in, because you don't want to waste your time with people who you don't have the right solution for. There are hundreds of thousands of products and service offerings and providers and things like that are going to be the right fit for them, right? So those would be my 3 suggestions on how to really use their metrics to forecast some of your future marketing efforts.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, so Shane, you've worked on, I'm sure, lots of different campaigns for Quip, some, like you mentioned, those like creative ones. How do you know when a marketing campaign has been successful?
Great question. I think ultimately when sales go up, I think that's the end goal, but to Tiffany's point, there's a lot that happens in between somebody becoming aware of your product or brand and deciding to make that purchase. And so there's a lot that you can measure within that. I think it's important to, one of the earlier things we did was set up a if this then that, automation. Anytime someone tweeted about Quip or about some of the product lines we were in, we had different Slack channels, and we're kind of consistently seeing that communication and that chatter online, and being able to measure and have a feel for the pulse of, oh, hey, we went on this, we published an ad in this email newsletter, or we worked with this podcast host or influencer, and seeing how people are reacting, seeing if that conversation goes elsewhere, I think can be a really helpful kind of anecdotal signal along the way. On top of that, just starting from the top of the funnel and working your way down, how much web traffic did this drive? How did that traffic behave on site? How many pages did they visit? Did they, add product to cart, et cetera? And getting a sense for all of those metrics across all of your different marketing channels is really important, so that when you do a new test or test out a new channel or vendor, you have benchmarks and bench lines across other channels to compare against. Ultimately, having a sense for how that will translate to sales over time is super helpful. And I think Dreamo made a great point about getting feedback directly from your customers. The best thing you can do is ask. And so all of these different data signals, your web traffic, et cetera, aren't super personal, but your customers are generally very willing to share feedback and insights. And so one of the most impactful things that we implemented at Quip was a post-purchase survey, and optimizing that survey to get to a place where we had 80% of our customers responding to that gave us a really, really strong signal of which marketing campaigns and tactics were working, because we were hearing it directly from our customer.
Amazing. So yeah, we've kind of heard two very useful tools, looking at your KPIs from Tiffany. She mentioned what has been the experience of those customers or those clients. And then Shane, you're talking about the traffic and feedback from those customers. And so Jamal, when you're planning your next marketing strategy, how can you use data to inform what you're going to do next?
Yeah, so I think two things that I'll touch on, kind of piggybacking on what Shane was sharing. I think one is making sure that you understand the purpose of each channel that's in your marketing mix. Not all channels are good at the same marketing objective, right? There'll be some channels that will be better for awareness. There'll be some channels that will be better for conversion. There will be some channels that, depending on who you're targeting and what you're trying to accomplish, it may be a mix of the two. There may be certain products within a channel that you would use for certain purposes. So being really clear on what the intent is with the different channels that you're using across your marketing funnel. The other thing that Shane touched on a little bit was the idea of automation, and the kind of the key piece to automation is connection between all of the different tools that you're using in your marketing tech stack, to ensure that when something happens in one of your channels, you can respond to it quickly in another, and kind of having that centralized repository of all that customer data so that you can action on it quickly through automations. So the idea of being really intentional about setting up your tech stack and setting up the data connections within that tech stack is super important. The businesses that we talk to are using upwards of 9 or 10 different tools just to manage their marketing. If you think about your website, your analytics, different places. So the extent to which you can make those connections between data sources is what's really going to power the idea of automation that's going to help you respond quickly to users' needs, respond in a way that is relevant to users' needs in a time and space where they are looking for answers to questions, or time and space where they're ready to engage with you or ready to make a purchase.
Thank you for that, Jamal. Well, today it's not enough for a brand to sell a cool product. Customers are looking for brands that stand for something and form communities, especially Gen Z. So Shane, how has Quip connected with its audience to form a community?
That's a great question, and a very important emerging trend. We ultimately, somewhat going back to that notion of building trust, consistency and authenticity, I think, are really helpful. Some of the things that we've done to really live into that, as we've launched new products more recently, we've encouraged the Quip team to record or make a TikTok ad, and we've put spend or investment behind all of those, and really shown an authentic voice, an authentic experience with our products. We've increasingly used content and reviews from customers as Gen Z and others are looking for the non kind of plastic or produced version, but the authentic version of what's being created. Beyond that, we also support a lot of causes and ensure that we use our platform and our following, for good and to make an impact in the world. So we've been super fortunate to partner with Global Dental Relief, Remote Area Medical, Charity Water, the Ollie Forney Center here in New York City, and we're consistently looking at organizations that are doing good that we can work with to amplify our collective missions. And as we've done that, we've also engaged in conversation and jumped on different trends. We had the team together as the Corn Kid video was having its moment in the spotlight on TikTok, and we're like, hey, let's take an hour and let's film a TikTok video for this trend, and it got 400,000 plus views. So always take a minute to step aside and be opportunistic about some of those moments, and ultimately that authenticity is going to come through.
Awesome. And Jamal, sometimes it can be one thing to connect with a community when you're small, but what happens when you have grown a little bit? How do you connect with a community at scale in a way that still feels personal?
Yeah, it's a difficult challenge that a lot of businesses face as they kind of hit a certain inflection point. Because what happens is your customer base becomes more and more diverse, whether that's geographically, whether that's kind of in their interests. Your product portfolio or the services that you offer get more diverse, so there are more variables to take into account there. I think a couple of things. One, going back to kind of where Tiffany started us off with this idea of vision, kind of the extent to which you can stay grounded in your brand's vision, your brand voice, to maintain that authenticity is always going to kind of help win the day in terms of scaling with some sense of authenticity. And then it's about the tools that you have to be able to do that at scale, because at a certain point, it's going to be difficult to meet your audience at the right place at the right time, doing it in manual ways. So making sure that you're taking that tone of voice and that brand kind of mission and promise, and weaving that within all of your comms. There are some ways to help you scale. Obviously, AI is a big discussion point today for marketers, and the extent to which it can be used to help you kind of speed up the content development process as you scale. There's a lot there that you can work with, even if it's just as idea generators. but making sure that you're still kind of incorporating that sense of tone and voice that's true to your brand as you're using those tools. And then I'll go back to the idea of automating as much as you can. Taking that message and making sure that it's being dispersed across all of your channels in a coordinated way, in a cohesive way that's allowing you to meet your customers where they are and meet your customers with the right tone of voice that's still authentic to your brand.
Yeah, tone of voice, that sounds like a really important piece for businesses to get right. And so Tiffany, what are some examples of ways your clients have built communities around their audiences?
Yeah, so this is I love listening to the responses of the other panelists, and it's a really sensitive topic, specifically in my industry right now, because a lot of trust has been lost over the past couple of years. A lot of businesses in the service-based industry have scaled tremendously, right? We were in the house, we were hungry, we were thirsty, we wanted to scale, and we wanted to do all these other things. And now we're outside again, right? Things have gotten tighter, budgets have gotten tighter, goals have gotten tighter, and what a lot of my clients are facing right now when they are building their communities is not just looking at who they're serving in the realm of demographics, but the psychographics. People are dealing with a lot of things today, and the dismissal or not having the awareness of that from your customers, at least in the service-based industry, is detrimental, right? So when my clients are building their communities, they're not just looking at who am I serving, what are they doing right now, but what are their issues right now? What do I kind of have to peel back from? What, not to say that I'm going to be your therapist, honey, but I realize that there are some things that you're struggling with, right? Because we always want to get to, in communities, we're often building from lack, right? We're building from what we wish we had, or we're building to get more of our people together, right? And so when we aren't tapped into at least some of the stuff that they may be going through, it doesn't get them to that final destination, or at least open the path, bridge the gap to going down their journey. So that's one thing that my clients are doing right now with their communities. What they're also doing is understanding the different levels of intimacy that they need to offer, and also being able to solve one problem very, very quickly. Our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter nowadays. And so within their communities, instead of offering these kind of long journeys, they're saying, okay, you're here and you want to get to maybe not even from A to B, but A1 or A2 or A3, to give someone a quick win. Because with that quick win, what they're going to do is increase their confidence, and it's going to be like, okay, I can do this. I can go to the next. Thing. Even with something as like with brushing your teeth, with Quip, it's just like, okay, how can I want to improve my oral hygiene, my oral health, right? And so what are the things that in the community, oral health is connected to so much more than just your mouth, right? It's connected to our whole body. And so wellness, I'm sure, is a part of Quip's messaging, his core messaging and the values that it has. It's not just about the toothbrush, right? It's about how can I foster a community around health and well-being and things like that. So those are some of the ways that my clients there's some of the things that they're thinking about when they're building communities and paying attention to when they're saying like, look, I have the responsibility with this group of people, right? And they take it very, very seriously. So those are just some of the things. I could go on and on about it, but I want to make sure that I'm staying concise with your question rather.
Thank you. Yeah, awesome. I love what you said about bridging the gap within your community and really understanding what they're thinking about, what concerns them. Amazing. Well, there are many different platforms and marketing tools that businesses can use, from social media to email. So Shane, how do you determine the most effective platform for your business?
Yeah, and first, Tiffany, you understand well. That's the message we work to get out in the open. And Jennifer, in terms of determining the right platform, it's going to change over time. I've been working and growing the marketing discipline at Quip for 8 years, and the channels that we've leveraged over that time have changed drastically, and you always have to be ready for change and always looking for opportunities to really, especially as a small business, to break through and to have kind of another step change in your growth trajectory. And ultimately the data is going to tell you that. So similar to what we talked about in terms of efficiency metrics, and really getting to know and understand that data, because you might work with partners that have a particular bias and have a particular methodology, and it can sometimes be easy to hide behind data. And so, as someone leading a small or medium business, ensuring that you go a layer deeper and use multiple lenses to determine the effectiveness of a strategy is super important. And so early on, that was looking at our post-purchase survey, looking at our kind of last click or UTM or Google Analytics tracking, and comparing that against what we might see in platform in a Meta or in a Pinterest, and using that kind of collection of data or signals to really guide your strategy and determine where to invest your next dollar, I think is really, really important. Beyond that, I think you still need to leave room for experimentation. I think a good rule of thumb is 80-20, and reserve 20% of your time or resources or budget toward testing new things. We thought that audio would never work for Quip and oral care. We have such a well-designed set of products. We thought that the selling that was working for us was actually the visuals, but we tested regardless, and that ended up becoming one of our largest advertising channels, and we have a lot of really successful partnerships in the audio space. And so we were proven wrong. We also had a thesis that dating apps would work great. What group of people are not more prone to ensure that their oral care is at the top of its game than those that might be on dating apps? It went terribly. All of the data came back, and that was not the next platform that we should pursue at the time. And so that kind of consistent testing and experimentation, I think is really important on the consumer growth or customer growth side of things. But back to Tiffany's first point, once again, of vision, sometimes you need to prioritize not just based on the near-term data, but on where you want the company to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Early on, we leveraged MailChimp, and we worked with like brands to run giveaways to grow our email list, because we knew that was something that come Black Friday of the next year we could leverage and we could rely on, whereas paid advertising might be out of budget or might not be in the cards. Something could change, and so we used email as a channel or a tactic or strategy, finding similar brands, doing giveaways, sharing the entrance of those giveaways to grow our email lists. And just by doing that one tactic, we grew our email list from about 5,000 leads to over 200,000 in less than a year. And we produced those in-house. It was relatively low cost. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities as a small business. We also know strategically we're expanding into teledentistry and telehealth, and so the data might not say that working directly with dental providers is the next best advertising channel. But as we talk about vision, it's an important thing for us to develop. So we go to trade shows and we have relationships with dentists, dental hygienists, et cetera. And so you always kind of have to balance what the data is telling you as a small business with where you want to take the company a year from now, 2 years from now. what channels do you want to be reliant or not reliant on, and have that help guide your strategy.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love those examples that you give of, whether it's a dating app or the testing audio, you got to kind of test things out to see where you're going to fit the best. And I also want to ask the same question to Jamal. So, how do you tend to approach finding the best platform for businesses?
Yeah, so I think Shane's point around kind of the vision of where you want to head and the extent to which a platform is going to grow with you is a really important one. You also want to think about the extent to which a platform is going to play with the other tools in your toolkit from a software standpoint is an important consideration. And then there's obviously the element of kind of, do you feel like you're going to have the support that you need from that platform kind of long term, whether it's being able to access someone if you need help, being able to access a community of other users, if you need to hire someone on board to help you out with that tool, is there an active community of people that you can hire from to help out with that kind of thing? I think these are important things for the long term thinking, to make sure that you're making decisions that are going to kind of grow with you as you scale your business over time, which I think in some cases it's for small businesses, especially just starting out, you're often just trying to grab whichever tool is easiest for you to get started on. You're in speed of kind of, how do I get up and going quickly mode? How do I start testing things quickly, which is the exact way you should be thinking, right, as you're getting started, to understand that product market fit. But there's a point in time where, as you're starting to scale, thinking for what is the tool that's going to grow with you, because switching tools is not a cheap proposition, just in terms of the resources it takes to kind of move things around, move data around. So making sure that you're mindful of what's the next year, 2 years look like, and where you want to be too, and kind of taking that into consideration as you're choosing the right tool for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and Shane had mentioned, sometimes the platform will change. And so, something we saw back in 2021, Instagram had a major outage that left many businesses with no way to communicate with their customers. So this showed a lot of business owners how important it is to spread their marketing efforts among multiple platforms. So Tiffany, how should business owners diversify their marketing efforts, in light of this?
Yeah, I think that they should diversify their marketing efforts by using repurposed strategies on owned channels. So a lot of our efforts are put out via social media, which is great, right? But what happens when X, Y, and Z founder decides, you know what, this isn't working, or tech breaks, right? That's why we have amazing platforms like MailChimp, right? So I can speak directly to my customers whenever I want to. I'm not reliant on Instagram. I'm not reliant on YouTube. I'm not reliant. Those things all work in your ecosystem, your marketing ecosystem, or your stack rather. And so diversifying means, I think, taking what you have now, right? Making an assessment, because we talked about analytics before, right? There's probably so much rich content that you've already produced that could be repurposed on another channel. Again, like an own channel, through newsletters, through your website, through your blog, all of those different things. And that way you're also kind of playing the Google game along with it. So those are the ways that I would suggest. That's the only way I would suggest, honestly, is really coming in with a repurposed strategy, because for a lot of these small businesses, you are the marketing department, you are the CEO, you are the finance department. You're playing so many roles, have so many different hats. And so to make it a little bit easier for yourselves, that's where I would start with that repurposed strategy. Dig into your content and find out where you could expand upon things, where you can move things over into your newsletter, move things over into your blog to keep people in your ecosystem so you can continue to nurture them. People need to be nurtured with your content. It's so important when you're talking about opening up into other channels and diversifying things.
For a business and their marketing teams, something that we hear from our businesses all the time. So the extent to which you can use these tools to start generating ideas for things like blog topics that you might pick up, or topics for your email newsletter. In addition to kind of analyzing your customer data, these AI tools can be a great way to generate lists of ideas and topic areas that you might be able to explore for your audience. The other is in the context of A/B testing or multivariate testing of different options. Often, as we think about optimizing your campaigns, one of the more difficult parts of doing testing is coming up with multiple variants that you can test against. And a lot of these content generation tools are really great with being able to give a prompt and generate a lot of different options of different ways that you might write a piece of copy. So as you're working on your emails, working on your landing page copy, things of that sort, social media copy, you can use these tools to kind of generate a lot of ideas for you that you could potentially test, so that you're optimizing always. The last thing I'll mention is that while a lot of the text generation has been at the center of the conversation around AI, AI tools are also great with serving up recommendations, analyzing large sets of data and serving up recommendations. So the extent to which you can use AI tools to give you feedback on your work in more real-time or more scalable ways that don't require you to have a data analyst on board, but can kind of serve that information back to you in a way that's actionable. That's another way to think about the use of AI. So the extent to which it can generate recommendations for you based on your data, to give you an idea of what to do next, what channel to try next, how to tweak your campaigns, who you should target next with your next campaign based on behaviors in shopping and visits and things of that nature. So a lot of different spaces to explore, but I think ultimately these AI tools are going to be a great way to help accelerate marketers with their strategy development and kind of their plans of action.
Amazing. Well, we heard a lot about different tools and strategies and best practices, and some marketers will be able to tackle it all, but others might have to keep an eye on their limited resources. So to close out our conversation, I want to ask all of you, what is your number one piece of advice or the most important tool marketers should start with? And we can start with Tiffany.
I think my suggestion would be, after all of this information that you now have, would just to take a breath, pause, and then embark on like an audit, right? Run through what you're doing right now, your strategies in marketing, and say, okay, is this working? Is the content hitting where we want it to? Do we have a vision or an intention for our marketing strategies for 2023, 2024 for our product suite, right? And so once you're able to do that audit, I think the next step is to just clearly communicate it across the brand, across all teams that you have, to make sure that everyone is moving in the same direction to achieve the goals that you want to. So that would be my suggestion.
Awesome. And what about you, Shane?
Yeah, I think that prioritization can be difficult because you're pulled in so many different directions. But if there's one place to focus, I think it's ultimately on the customer and the customer experience. There's the quote of, people forget what you say, people forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think as a small business leader or owner, it's so important to ensure that you're, leaving your customers or engaging with your customers in a way that makes them feel positively about your brand, because as you continue to grow, that organic word of mouth is going to accelerate and enable sometimes and amplify any of your kind of paid marketing efforts or advertising efforts, as there will be all these advocates essentially there saying, oh yeah, like I love this, or I love this brand, I love this product, here's how it's helped me. And so ensuring that you're going back, reading reviews, ensuring that you're getting a high completion rate on, if you have like a net promoter score survey, an NPS survey, and really ensuring that you're being led and directed and you're guiding your vision based off of the voice of the customer and the experience of the customer is always going to be a recipe for success, regardless of what business you're in.
Yeah, I love that, being guided by the customer's voice. Awesome. And lastly, what about you, Jamal?
Yeah, I'll similarly stick with the customer. And I think the first thing I would encourage any business to do is make sure that they are consolidating, organizing, and understanding their customer data. Tiffany touched on the kind of importance of those owned channels earlier. And the first step to being able to leverage those owned channels in an effective way is to have a good grasp on the data that you have access to and using that data to pull out interesting nuggets of information or insights that's going to drive that strategy. So the first thing I would encourage any business to do is to make sure that that data lives in one place, make sure that it's organized in a way that's actionable for your business, and spend the time to kind of pick out what are some insights from that data that can help you with that strategy development.
I'd like to thank my guests, Jamal, Tiffany, and Shane, for sharing such actionable insights. We heard what marketers and business owners can do to scale their businesses in today's fast-changing market. And thank you to our presenting partner, MailChimp. And to our audience, thank you for joining. Remember to share your thoughts using the hashtag #InsiderEvents. We'll continue to cover these topics at Insider, so please be sure to follow us. In a few moments, our survey will pop up on your screen. We'd love to get your feedback so we can keep improving. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.